Under your leadership at Ullman Sails, how many sales have you helped make?
Oh, roughly 10 to 20,000.
What is the best time of year if you're looking for a deal to come to you to purchase a sail?
August, September.
Greg, what is the smallest boat you've ever made sales for?
1 foot,
And what is the largest boat?
80,
What is the life of a sail in nautical miles?
6,500 to 1,500.
Hello and welcome back to Full Displacement, a podcast by Current Yachts. I am thrilled to introduce you today to Greg Koski from Ullman Sails, and we're going to talk about everything you should know as a sailor cruiser when it comes to sales. Greg, welcome to the program.
Morning. How's everybody doing?
Doing amazing. A little chilly on the East Coast. You're in Florida, Amanda. Greg, both of you right now are just in the tropics.
Well, everyone is
A little bit.
suffering up in the winter storm. We're down here saying, oh, how beautiful and lucky we are to live in Florida. Me on the East Coast and him on the West Coast of Florida. So it's great.
Got it. Well, I will be coming down to the Miami Boat Show soon, so relief's on the way. But for now, we're expecting very long frigid temperatures. It's going to be a blast. Greg, I would love to know more about you and your background. And I read, of course, a bit about you. But for the audience who doesn't know you and your stellar sailing history and background, tell us about you.
You know, I got into this business, it's almost 35 years ago now. And I got in because I was working for a company, not making money in the real world. And I said, I think I can do this. I was doing it as a supplemental thing, to make money on the side, and went to my dad and said, hey, I think I know more than the teacher now, and I want to start my own. Dad gave me a few shekels, and next thing you know, I opened up a sail loft, and it worked out. So I've been here for almost 35 years now, and so it's been a great ride. No need to quit yet. Still going to go. So there'll be a few more years after this.
And we know there has been, let's say, consolidation in recent, I guess, last year, the Sailmakers. Can you speak to how that affected Ullman Sails and your business?
Yeah, I think for us, we were independently owned business. So I think it fits our need perfectly, because when you have North and Quantum and Doyle merging together, they're making one big conglomerate. And so what happens is the small person gets left out. I would say maybe like the low-hanging fruit or whatever, how you ever want to say it. So we're staged probably one of the top 3 sail lofts in the world, but since we're independently owned and with an international flavor, that puts us right in line to meet with a lot of the customers. And we have seen an influx of business because of it. Some people don't want to do the mega companies, and some don't want to do the very small companies. But we find out we're strategically planned very well, as we have 82 lofts around the world. So it makes it really nice.
And what is your territory, Greg, as part of the Ullman family? I understand you cover some parts of the Midwest and the East Coast. Can you speak to that?
Well, for me, I haven't decided to slow down. As I mentioned earlier, I own a loft in Cleveland. I have one in Buffalo. I'm in with people in Wilmington. I'm in with the people in Noank, Connecticut. I own the Annapolis loft, and we're just bringing another one on that I'm going to work with a guy out of Syracuse up to Kingston, Ontario, up in that area. So I have a wide territory, and my goal was, since Ullman had originated from the West Coast, that I was in the Midwest, and I saw, well, we need a feeder on the East Coast. So I started to build up the East Coast. Now, Ullman Sails has always been on the East Coast for years. Max Skelly and the Skelly family were part of Ullman for 40 years up in Harpdegrave, and I got myself into Annapolis. So it's been really good.
In the interest of full disclosure, I'm a Ullman Sail customer. I actually had a new jib made by Greg and his team, so I can speak to my own experience. But in general here today, we really want to help our listeners, our boat buyers, sellers, fully understand, right, what comes with a boat typically. So we're going to start there, but understand in general how sales impacts not only the experience, the resale value, and is an important decision when it comes to upgrading. So we'll definitely go through that today. Amanda, what is your experience with Sailmakers?
It's been a lot and varied. When I first started out, obviously, I was a struggling sailor looking for the cheapest sails there were and going to the secondhand stores, and quickly realized that that was going to be chasing a tail that didn't quite work. So I bit the bullet and had some sails made by a local loft here. And that was a really good decision for me. But I've learned a lot, and this is a really good introduction to what you need before buying and thinking about the process, or when you're buying a boat, how much do I need to allocate down the line or budget for my sales? But knowing that, Greg, in your opinion, what is the ongoing cost in sailboat ownership for sales, would you say?
Well, people, they're so diverse, and depending on the boat that they get, that's the biggest challenge because some people will buy a boat and they'll buy that boat for maybe $15,000. And then they go to get some sales and they realize, wow, the sales cost $15,000. So we're always balancing budget with the sailor's need. Sometimes we really have to dig stuff out from them so we get an understanding how they're going to utilize the boat, where they're going with the boat. And in different areas from the East Coast to the Midwest to the West to the South, everybody uses their boat different. So we have to come up with a game plan. So maybe it's one new sail. Maybe we can find them a used sail. Maybe we can just patch up what they have for a while and say, okay, hey, let's formulate a budget and let's try to keep a budget. Because when people buy a boat and find out the sales are more than the boat, they're very hesitant to buy new sails. And unfortunately, that's just what it is. So you got to remember, sails are the engine. I mean, without the sails on a sailboat, then the boat really doesn't work. And so you got to make sure those are in good shape.
It goes back to that experience, right? Having a in-mast furling main, I am also very aware of how the condition of your sail can impact the experience. So if you do not have in-mast rigging, I will just tell you in a nutshell, when the sail starts to wear and the shape changes, it doesn't roll into the mast properly, and it creates a lot of tension on the boat when it's time to, hey, let's furl the sail back in. It's time to go home, and we can't bring the sail in. That's a problem.
Yeah.
We've all been there. I've had both. I started out on a fully battened classic main, and I basically used it, like you said, Greg, spoke to my sail loft, and they said, well, we can restitch this for you maybe one or two times. And by the second stitching and the third blowout and tear, I said, Amanda, it's time. We've done as much as we can for you, which is great, because if you understand where a person is, and we do that in yacht sales, asking a lot of questions to see where the person is and try to work with them where they're at. And eventually they come around, like I did myself, and realize this is all I've got out of these sales. And when I just sold that boat, it came with 2 brand new sails in the bag that I just handed over, that I hadn't even put, because I was ready to be able to switch to brand new sails until those were done.
Yeah, it's nice when you can do that. And if you have somebody that's asking the questions and helping you, that's a big deal. I mean, there's a lot of people. The sailmaking industry's changed. There's very few of guys left like myself, some like in my loft and my other lofts, where we were the guys that used to get down on the floor when we used to hand cut sails. So we know the inside and out of a sail. We know how to recut them. We know how to reshape them. We know how to do this. We know how to do that. Well, the newer generation doesn't know how to do that as much. They have to kick it upstairs to find out, hey, what do I need to do? What's wrong with this? And so when we have that background, it really helps us understand your needs. So we can go, and as Marilyn said, when you have a furling main, yes, we can fix those. But what you have to worry about is dollars versus on the repair side versus a new one. So if we can repair and make it work for another year or a year and a half, and let's say it's only $500, then, we're going to steer you down that ride. Steering on her boat, a new main's going to be more expensive since she's, almost 40 feet. $500 is not that bad versus something that's going to be $4,500. And always in the furling mains too, which people don't understand, is that it's tough to just stay with normal standard Dacron. Furling mains you need to kind of take a step up. It's not that we are trying to upgrade you too far. We want to make sure that sail furls in and out, because when a furling main doesn't furl in and out anymore, that's a headache. And you get caught out in a windy day and you can't furl that in, it's going to cause more problems. And the whole point about sailing is to be able to go out and relax, enjoy the atmosphere, see what's going on, and things like that. And when things don't work, that's when trouble arises, and you're kind of like, oh, what am I doing here? I'm not sure if I really like this. So keep it cool and make sure everything works.
So you just touched on that, and I wanted to come back to, sales 101 and sales material. We do realize that one of the first biggest criteria and impact on the cost of your sail will be the size of your boat. The bigger the boat, the more expensive the sails, right? But if I'm correct, the material is the next biggest thing to consider. Can you speak to those materials that exist today, Greg, and what you recommend for cruising sailors to start?
Well, it's really difficult to put because you go from standard Dacron, which is just your cross cut. It's in levels like this, and you might have 12 panels in it. That's your basic sail. But as I say that, then there's also 7 different types of 7-ounce fabric. There's your very loosey goosey weave, and then there's your stronger weaves and your strongest weaves and things like that in Dacron. So there's variations whether you're using 6, 7, 8, 9 ounce or whatever. So you can always find a product in there that will work. But each time you take a level and to get a better product, it's going to come at a little bit more expense. Then you can change the cut into triradial sails. So that means all the loads will go up the leeches, up the luffs, go into the middle of the sail. And then that fabric has 4 or 5 different types of fabrics too, for 6, 7, and 8 ounces, depending on who you're getting it from and different strengths. So then we look at that cost. And then from there, you go into polyesters, you go into, carbon sport fabric, you go into carbons, and then you go into dynemas. So when I'm selling sails to big catamarans, we can do the big molded sails where they're molded together with string machines, laying yarns out all over the place and putting taffetas and light skins on tops and to make them durable and strength. You can keep GPL tri-radial sails are just as strong. And Dyneema is a great product for the big time cruiser. But as you go, you just keep escalating the cost. So what we have to find out is, what are you doing with the boat? Are you a coastal cruiser? Are you going to take this offshore? Are you going to be like in Annapolis? Are you going to go just up to Maine and back? Are you going to go down to Lauderdale where you are, Amanda? We got to find out where you're going with the boat. Then we can start putting you into options. Then we can worry about cost on where we are. So it's the same thing as we talked about earlier. We have to listen to what you have to say, the customer, so we get an understanding where they are going and what they're going to do with the boat. And then we can kind of give them a few options. Here's this number, here's this number, here's this sail, and kind of then work them through the maze a little bit to pinpoint exactly what they want.
I was going to add one thing I learned very early on is the different weight of those materials and what that means for sail handling, but also handling of the sail when it's in a bag or you have to put it on the boat. Amanda, do you have that experience as well? It's really unbelievable what those fabrics differences make.
Yeah, the weight and, doing these things by yourself as a female and trying to fold them and put them all together, you know, obviously you're going to get help when you're doing these things. But yes, all of that comes into play. And a lot of it has to do with climate. For me, down in South Florida with the strong sunshine, I'm going to choose a completely different sail and different stitching than someone maybe that's in the Northeast who is not sailing all year round in the bright sunshine. So there's a lot of things to consider when you're looking at that. It's also, are you a racer? Are you a cruiser? The choices are so varied when it comes to sails, and it really comes down to someone like you, Greg, who has the understanding and can listen to the client to know exactly what would fit their needs best.
Yeah, there's so many things, as you mentioned, with the stitching now. We kind of use it as a standard now is, Gore Tanara thread. And you have to use that because of the sunshine, especially in Florida, up through the Carolinas, even Annapolis. We can get away from it a little bit up in the Midwest, but we still have that as an option. And we let people know it's impervious to the elements, whether the changes in climate, the changes in sun from hot to cold to wet to dry. It comes with a 10-year warranty. The worst part about putting UVs on is that the stitching would fail in the old days. So now with Gore Tanara thread, we don't have that issue. It makes it a nice product. So when you have to have a furling main, when you have the little piece of umbrella out on the back or a furling jib, you can rely that it's going to be there for the next 4, 5, 6, 7 years without needing to be restitched. Because that was a common practice constantly after, 2, 3 years was like, hey, we got to restitch this. Well, after you spend $4,000 on a sail, last thing you want to do is be restitching after a couple of years. So this is just a way to eliminate that, and the upgrade is not that expensive. It's a wise choice to do, and you figured it out yourself now.
What I find is difficult sometimes is to actually assess that's the usage that you can have out of a sail that's been used on a boat. So we're trying to advise our buyers when they're looking at a boat. First of all, is this a boat that they're going to bring through a survey? Because if there's too many things that are wrong right off the bat, it will be too expensive and that the seller will not budge on price. Like there's no need to go through an entire survey to find out that all these things are just not going to work out. But let's assume we're past now a survey and we find out we have an appreciation of the sales from the surveyor. And it may be just that, a guess, because that's not their expertise. There can be surprises that are found for sales. And we've now discovered that new sale inventory is expensive. How often do you find these surprises in boat buyers that thought they had more life left in their sales and comes to find out they're going to have to replace these sales this season? Do you advise people with this when they say, hey, Greg, would you come look at that boat with me?
We tell people if they are in a purchase situation to bring the sails in, let us take a look at it. We've seen a few times, nothing against the surveyors. I mean, their job is to look at the boat, find out water, see what's going on in the boat, make sure the mast is right, the standing rigging's okay. But at the same time, it's like anything in purchasing a house. There's going to be some things missed. Just because a sail looks bright and white and looks new and all that, it doesn't mean it's good. I mean, we see like on the racing side when people get a boat and then they have sails and they're like, oh, all my race sails are good. What we find out is those sails look great, but they might be 10 years old. So they've never been used. The boat's been on dry dock or whatever. And then you're like, well, here's what's going to happen. Those will shrink over time because of the laminates. If they're film on films, they shrink. So if the guy had 155% Genoa, now it's 145%. So it doesn't meet his perf needs. So he's wondering why he's going slow. Well, I got these new sails. Well, they shrink. And if there's different fabrics, they're going to shrink at different rates. They're going to stretch at different rates. So the sails aren't necessarily good. So he buys the boat, then he comes on in and says, well, I don't know what's going on with these. And, if we didn't get a chance to look at them, then we can tell him and say, well, hey, this sails looks great, but it's not going to perform great because it's lost its size, it's lost its shape and things like that. And same thing with Dacrons. The Dacron might look good that the surveyor sees it, but you could actually take your hand sometimes and maybe blow through the cloth because it was built very cheaply, doesn't have everything in it. So when the puff hits, the sail just goes like a big balloon. So the surveyor wouldn't actually know that unless he kind of held it up in the loft, take a look at it really good. They're just kind of looking at the stitching, making sure it's halfway decent and say, hey, these are good sails to get you around. And that's what we would say. Hey, if these are brand new, this will buy you some time. Start saving your pennies because they're blown out or they've shrunk or whatever. But I think it's very good that if you're able to get people to look at the sails during the time of purchase, it's great. I mean, because there is a value there.
Are you able to assess from a photo adequately?
Yes. I mean, we can see a photo if you take some good pictures, and we would ask, hey, take some pictures. If you held the sail up, we could do that too. And you can get a feel for if the sail's heavy enough. And if you feel it's like your bed sheet, then it's no good. But if you feel some resins in it, it's a stiff, you can kind of tell, hey, this is still pretty good. The shape might not be perfect. That's a little tough to find out. But at the same time, these type of sails that are on boats can be changed a little bit. If they're a little deep, we can take the luff tapes off and change the luff curves and make them a little flatter, and we can make them go for a little while longer. So if you spend, a few $100s or whatever the number would be, these sails could be great for the next 2, 3, 4 years, and maybe we don't have to do anything also.
Yeah, more often than not in a survey, in the report, you'll see pictures of the sails. And I learned something, Greg, that I will ask for a few more pictures. So if sails are unable to come off during the survey and then be assessed by a sail loft before a decision to purchase or not, if a close-up and detailed picture is enough to get a better idea than actually bringing it to the loft, being that it would be the best case scenario, that's a good thing for us to know. And thank you for that.
Yes, I mean, it's sometimes too in that if you're on the boat and they can't come off, if you can unfurl them, if they're up, if it's a furling main or furling that, just unfurl them and take pictures too. That'll help because you can just see some wrinkling in corners. You can see the leeches if there's hooks and things like that, and that'll really help you give you an idea. And then you can test it yourself to find out if the main is furling in and out really good or not.
A couple questions for those new sailors that are considering new sail inventory. Can you explain your process? Do you come onto every boat to measure or do you use templates? How do you go about giving a quote for a new sail to someone who's trying to add something to their boat?
It's always difficult sometimes if we don't get them face to face. Sometimes we'll just get something on the computer that says, "Hey, I need a new mainsail." Okay. So you sit there and you say, okay, now what are you doing? I mean, I'm always asking a question from their question because I got to get an understanding the process of what they're doing. And once I have that, then I can give an idea of quote. If I don't have the boat in the files, yes, then we'd probably have to measure or I'd ask a few questions. If the boat's kind of local, it's pretty simple. If they're from afar, say they're, in Indiana, they're in Kentucky, or they're somewhere, maybe I have to have them do a few things, but it's pretty simple. As I mentioned before, I've been in the business for 34 years. I've had people who've retired and given me all their files. So I have probably 14 file cabinets of sales that go back to the 1917s all the way through today. So we usually have it. The key things that we need, what side is the UV on? And if it's a furling jib, the pin-to-pin dimensionment. We need that max hoist so we can build it right. Catalina Direct Sales is actually Ullman product. Our loft out in Newport Beach, California runs Catalina Direct. So we have all the data on every Catalina that's out there. But even when we sell one of those, I still like to have a pin-to-pin dimension. So we do a combination then. We do part measuring, and then we can ask the customer some. I sold a sail at the last boat show to a gentleman in Georgia. And I had him do a couple measurements for me just to double check.
Okay.
Photograph works great too. Hey, if you're not sure, just take a photograph of your tack, your clue, take the tape measure all the way to the top, take a picture where the tape's sitting so there's no problem with the number. There are some outlets that you have to measure all the boat for them. And then it's on you. So if that sail comes out wrong, it's on you. Now, I'm not a
Right.
big fan of that because then you have no repercussions because all they're going to do is say, well, that's your problem, not my problem. So if one of my guys in one of the lofts sits there and goes, hey, they take some measurements and they send it to me and I'm into the design process of it. And I go, okay, this is what it should be. And their number's a foot off or a foot and a half off. I'm like, well, I built 25 of these sails. That number can't be right. What's going on the boat? Go back and measure, find an old sail, do whatever you can, call the customer because this dimension's wrong. So we'll catch it in the design phase sometimes. We could also find out that, hey, the guy wanted a, 12-inch pennant on the bottom of the sail, or he made his furling drum a foot and a half higher than most because he wanted it over the bow pulp at the sail. So those are things why I say take a picture, so we can then properly understand what the person has so we can quote. Because we do a lot of sales that aren't in our area where we can't measure, New Jersey, Maine, Kentucky, Indiana, Georgia, in all these places. So we do have to rely on the customer a little bit, but we'll take onus too because, I have files so I can go back and double check and say, I think you're wrong. Can you double check
Yeah.
this for me?
And that brings up a really good point for me in what I'm doing every day. What questions would you advise that a new boat buyer ask of the current seller about the sales, specifically about the sales?
How's your maintenance on them? When was the last time they were checked? How did you use them? How old are they? You don't necessarily need to know the cost. What kind of shape are they? If you buy this boat and say it's a 6-year-old boat and the sails are 6 years old, then you want to know what was your cruising? Because if the person had it for 6 years but was going across to the Bahamas, going down to the islands, he's put a lot of miles on them. So at 6 years, they could be at the tail end of their lifespan. So I think those are a couple of things that they have to ask. The maintenance, how did you use the sails? How many miles do you think are on them? If they say they're just coastal, they're 4 or 5 years old, and they say they keep them regularly checked, you're in pretty good shape. And maybe they can just say, hey, if you'd like to, here's the number of the loft that we use, call them and they'll give you a rundown on it. Or maybe I have a lot of customers that they want their invoice constantly because they make a database on their boat. So if they do go to sell, it's like I do with my car. And
Yeah.
anytime I get an oil change or whatever, I have it all in my glove compartment, get stacked like this. And so if I sell that car, you can see all my maintenance that was done to it.
You'd be surprised. Some buyers are meticulous in their maintenance records and some keep none. It Spans the gamut.
Do you provide sales as well to, say, charter fleets? I'm not sure what is your relationship with any of these small or larger operators.
We do a lot of charter fleets over in the islands. We do a lot of work with moorings with our catamarans. Ullman's really big in catamarans. We're probably one of the biggest catamaran suppliers in the world, and so we deal with, Balance. We deal with Royal Capes. We deal with every Leopard that's come off the factory line since 1993 has our sales on it. I deal a lot with Lagoon. We do Jeanneau. We do Benetos. We do a lot of charter fleets. We do some locally in Annapolis. We work for the foundry in Cleveland. I used to be the big main supplier for Tart Marine. And when they had CMC Yacht, we used to be the OEM dealer for them. And then they went defunct and now they're back online, which is great. What's so funny is just a quick story to get kind of little off. But a guy who worked for me when he was 16 years old now is the CEO of the new Tart Marine business. And so I put a call out to him the other day just to say, "Hey, John,
That's
how's it
awesome.
going? Can't believe you did it." But to see what we can do and help him, and maybe to see what their whole buildup's going to be over the lifetime again. They're not going to try to push out 125 boats a year, but they're going to try to push out, probably 25, 30, and get this company back on its track and maybe send it down the lines. I mean, I don't really know what they're doing, but they've got a good financial backing, a good sound core business starting. And I've seen a lot of photos of some boats coming on out. So that's kind of what's happening there on that. But yeah, that was a little off topic.
No, not at all. This is all great.
And that's what brings us to the $1,000,000 question that I think everyone wants to hear answered by you is what do new sales cost? And obviously, we know that varies by boat, but can you give us in general terms a 27 to 35-foot boat costs X for mainsail and jib? Let's just say a new set of sails.
Yeah, I mean, if you went 27 to say 35 feet, you can be anywhere from, $1,500, $1,200 all the way up to 5,000, maybe even more if you wanted to, depending on what the person's going to do. You can pretty much today pinpoint some customer and put them in the range that he wants to be and feel comfortable. I'm a guy that I don't want to sell the rock bottom as much because I find that comes back to haunt you. I find I'm more in the middle ground with a customer. I want something for a cruiser that's a little softer on the hands, but has still a lot of resin in it that's not going to lose its shape that quick. So we want to make sure that the customer feels good about the purchase. We want to make sure that he has a grasp of what he's getting, is understanding what he's getting. So then the cost doesn't really come into play as much. You just have to make sure that he also understands, as I said earlier, the sails are the engine of the boat. And what we always find out, I always get the question, I'm not a racer, I'm a cruiser. I understand that. Because of my racing background, I used to sell probably 80-20 of racing sales. Now I'm reversed. I sell probably 80-20 of cruising sales. Maybe it's just the age I'm getting and I don't want to go racing anymore. My body can't handle it. But I still go out there and do that. But I have an understanding for the cruiser because we all want to get from point A to point B a little bit faster. So if you're doing an ocean crossing, if you can cut 3 days off, if you can get from in the Annapolis region, if you want to get from Annapolis to St. Michael's and you can get there an hour earlier or an hour and a half earlier, that means you have more time and more relaxation at your destination. So we got to ramp up the fun meter a little bit. So if you can point higher, you can go a little faster. And that's what new sales do. I mean, they help it. They are the engines. They will move you faster. They will get you from healing as much and putting you back on your feet. So there's a lot of little factors that go into it and make the sailing and cruising a little bit more enjoyable.
Okay, so we went from 27 to 35. Now let's say we go from 35 to 45 or 50 foot in that range. How much would you say a new set of sails costs there?
So now we're down at probably the $3,500 range all the way up to maybe $8,000. Maybe we can push it to 10. So if we start changing the fabrics from Dacron, we start putting carbon sports in, we start using light skins, we do molded sails, we add taffetas on, we start using Dyneema. If we know this person's going to travel and he's going to go around the world on a 45-footer and we might want to use Dyneema, now we're going to probably double the cost of a traditional sail. Dyneema is one of the strongest products on out there. So the stretch rate isn't a lot. So this guy can go around the world and not have any issues. I sell a lot of big catamarans. I push them on Dyneema. I give them their option. We can go tri-radial. We can go cross-cut, depending on what they're doing. If they have a big 50-foot catamaran like a Lagoon 500 or a big Leopard 52 or something, or a Balance, then we got to start talking upper because now we're dealing with loads. So it's not only that, we have to deal with the elements. Are we going to get caught out in 50 knots, 40 knots, 30 knots? When you're doing a crossing, you can get caught in that. So now we have to make sure we have cloth that's not going to stretch out all the way that we feel comfortable with as we're out there sailing. So now price rises because
Right.
we have to not only protect the investment, we have to protect the boat, we have to protect the customer. So we got to have to make sure that they have something that they feel comfortable with. And then we have to make sure it's comfortable in their budget.
Sure.
We can go, the range starts going up as the boat gets up. And so if we're doing a Halla 70, now we could be into, $35,000 for
Right.
his mainsail. So it can go up.
Yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to do. I was going to give you two different scenarios. So let's say I have an older Amel, 48, 52 feet, somewhere around there, right? And I'm going to cross the ocean. I'm going to go transatlantic crossing. That's one set right there. And now we're going to say I have a charter catamaran, fairly new, Lagoon 52. Price point on those for charter usage. One is sailing across an ocean on a monohull, and one is a charter catamaran.
So if it's a charter catamaran, that's pretty much a stock Dacron. I mean, it's going to be on the 52. I just sold like a Lagoon 50 not too long ago. That's usually, good 11.5 ounce cross-cut Dacron. You're probably 8.5, 9 ounce on the furling Genoa, Gortanara thread, and you're probably $20,000 for a set of sails for that. And that's basic for the charter. Maybe we can get a little lower. It's usually 5 full battens, probably 2 or 3 reefs in it. So he's got a lot of stuff into it. 2-ply on the leech. Always on catamarans, I want 2-plies on the leech because they load up. Even though it's in charter, I still want that because you still have to protect your investment. And, those boats are being used all the time. But you don't need Dyneema for the charter. Now you, as a customer, when it comes out and you want to go around the world with that one, then I would say, okay, let's jump up maybe to Dyneema. Now on the other boat, I would sit there and say, okay, we can go ahead and buy your basic stock sails for that too, but are you going to go around again? That's what
That's
you got to
interesting.
find out. How long are
Right.
you going to have this boat? That boat, I want to push you into Dyneema, not because of the cost. It's just because I think it's the right product for the boat. If not, for sure, I'd probably try to take you out of the stock basic sails on that and put you maybe into tri-radials at least, a good tri-radial Dacron. So on that boat, you could go from $15,000 up to $30,000 on the budget, depending on what we're going to get. And you can mix and match. You don't have to have, both don't have to be Dyneema. You can have tri-radial in this. You could do something like this. I mean, we can go into a gamma of products that will perform well over time. My customers that have Dyneema are great. They come on in and they throw them on my sails, on my floor 2 years later. And I look at my guys and I'm going, man, there's nothing we can do to these sails. They're so good. People with, that kind of budget and the big boats understand that. And the smaller guy might say, well, I'll just buy 2 sails.
Right. Right.
I'll just get another set after 3 years. So you have to remember, going around the world, you're putting 20,000 miles on this thing, 30,000 miles. So it's a big difference from somebody just sailing around the bay where it takes them, 4 or 5, 6 seasons to put 20,000 miles on the boat if they're using it all the time. So it's a different thing. And that's one of the things we're always trying to ask customers, how you're using that boat, because it's 1 to 3. So if they're putting, 10,000 miles on it, that's really 3 years on the sails, where a
That's a
person goes 3 years and then they start equaling on out.
1 to 3. Good. That's a good motto. We'll have to keep that and use that.
So this leads me to a question about how you get those sails to sailors wherever they may be, because you have people that are obviously crossing oceans and so forth. Remind me, where are most of your sails made today?
Well, it depends. It's a good question. I mean, we still build in-house. So my production is in Cleveland. We don't build a whole lot in Annapolis. I try to keep one facility that I'm involved in where we do production. So I do production for my Carolina place. I do it for the Northeast place. I do it for the Syracuse. I do it for all the lofts there. If one of our lofts in the United States, I do a lot of work with one of our guys in Louisiana. It's done in house. I do one in Virginia. We have a loft there in Hayes, Virginia. So we'll build in house for them. As long as we stay probably 45, 50 feet and under, some of that will be done in house. If I'm doing a big catamaran sail, I just can't do that in house. I can build it, but I will slow production down and I'll bring everything to a screeching halt. There's too many details involved. There's too many things. As I mentioned earlier, Ullman is one of the biggest producers of catamaran sails in the world. In our Cape Town facility in Cape Town, South Africa, that's where a lot of the catamaran builders went after COVID. So Balance is down there, Leopard's down there. A lot of them took their facilities down there. And so our loft is there for that. We have a big production facility at 7 buildings. If I remember right, I've been down there 4 times. So, I mean, we have just a spinnaker area. We have one design area. We have a racing area. We have a catamaran facility. We have a Dacron area. We have 4 cutting machines. Yeah, it's 120 employees. It's crazy. They're pushing out probably 600 catamaran sales a year there. So why would I reinvent the wheel? Go where I know. We also have a China facility, a loft in China that's part of our group, and we do stuff there also, and we'll do the big stuff there. If we start getting, like I say, 50, 60 footers, I need to take that, unfortunately, or fortunately, it has to go overseas. If I want to keep in the U.S. because I have a customer that really says I have to have it in the U.S., I don't want anybody to build it. And if it's that big, then I might turn it on to our Ullman Sails Newport Beach, California facility, because they have 25 people there or so, if I remember right, and they can handle Santa Cruz 70 sales and big sales like that if we have a customer. You know, Unfortunately, in today's world, some people want it in the United States, some people don't care. It can come down to price at that point, but at the same time, I don't want to reinvent the wheel on certain sales. And it's like,
Sure.
hey, this is what we're going to do. And 99% of the customers are okay with it. The deal is make sure you're getting it there on time. You're following up with them. We're all going to maybe forget something along the way. I'm pretty good at answering emails that I can keep people abreast of something. When COVID hit or this hit, the tariffs hit or whatever, is that, all of a sudden things change. And so you have to be on top of your customers to make sure. It's a great learning lesson through COVID because we're getting suppliers that tell us, hey, this is on the way. It's not on the way, but you're just relaying a message and you don't know.
So will the price vary depending on where the sail is made? So you said you had production facilities down in South Africa, and we know that the importation duties and taxes and tariffs that have been implied recently have really affected the cost of that. Are you seeing a hit on that as well?
We see a hit, but I don't pass it on to the customer.
You don't.
We've got things kind of under control. We don't vary price from the US to wherever we get it done at. I
Okay.
mean, we kind of eat the tariff a little bit. I would say the sale price has gone up maybe 5% on our end, but that's not so much that the tariff has affected it. I would say, yeah, no, I can't really say that. It probably has, but it's our cloth suppliers because after COVID, cloth is being done overseas and it's being done in the US. But what's weird is some resins have to go overseas
Mm,
for that cloth
interesting.
to be made and vice versa.
Right.
So it kind of can get double tariffed. So we're not trying to tariff a customer and saying, well, that sale came in and you got to pay another 500 a tariff. Customer will lose their mind.
Right.
So maybe just overall that the sale price has gone up a little bit. I mean, and it also depends on what sector of the world you're in. I don't know what the other sail makers are doing. I hear what goes on, and some guys are like, "Oh, I get my sale, and there's a $600 or $700 tariff," and they lose their mind. Well, that's where I get the business then, because we're not trying to do that. We can just weather the storm. Okay, so you don't make as much or whatever, but your customer's a lot happier, and so that's how you build a business.
And the length of the longevity you've been in business has shown you how much that's worth and the value of that.
Yes, it's a good deal, and then, like I said, be upfront with the customer. If something's gonna be late, I mean, we're all gonna make mistakes. Things are gonna be late sometimes. I push very hard at getting customers, and this is a big thing for the new people to understand. Bring your sales in the fall, and that way they're ready for the spring. I know it every year. This is the greatest part about being a sailmaker is that It's winter time out. As you see from Marilyn's background, she has a nice winter snow. People aren't thinking about their boats now. And so they know they should get the sails up to us. The people that we've kind of taught and they understand the sails are already in the shop. Now, we don't charge anything to store the sails. We don't charge anything for you to bring the sails and for us to look them over. I think we set a new precedent in Annapolis for doing that. But when I started, it was more like, hey, how am I going to get this business? This is how I have to do it. And we get the customers to bring in. As long as you pay the bill, there's no storage. But it was more of a way to drive the customer in to that time of the season. I know as soon as they know tax season hits, the boats are going to get in. We will get another 100 sales that will come in all these lofts. And it'll be like, hey, I forgot to bring the sales in. And you're like, oh. And then we go full crazy on trying to get this done. And then people are buying sales again. They don't have the discounts like we offer at the show. We still get some discounts in that, But then all of a sudden, it's like the whole world in the sailing industry, the cloth demand goes from here all the way up to here. So now cloth supply is getting eaten up. So now things are going to be late. 3 weeks before that, everything was on time. So I push the customer, and I'm always trying to say, hey, I'm not trying to push if it works within the budget. Just say, can we get the sales in now and start building them? Let's get the repairs in now. It really helps us out. It'll help you on out. So when you put that boat in the water, you're ready to go sailing.
That's a very good reminder.
Or end of January, if the customer hasn't brought their sail to you, they're already late.
They're already late, like you, Marilyn.
And for all of those southern sailors in the Caribbean, probably the best time is hurricane season. Strip your sails, bring them to the loft. You've got yourself 8 weeks there of time that would be the best for you to work on the sails.
Yeah, we have kind of also part in on a one in Trinidad. My guy from the Northeast is a part owner into that thing. And so we understand the Trinidad thing is, they come out of the water. All the boats come out of the water. And so then the sails come into the shop there, and then we start looking at them and we start getting new sails on because then they'll pop back in the water. We have a loft in Grenada at the same thing. All the boats come out of the water. I'm getting emails from some of those people that I've sold sails to. And I say, hey, you go to our guys there in Grenada to have them take the sails off. And then they go in the loft and store, and then they get put back on. And so then the customer leaves the boat, it's all good. And so, yeah, like you said, Amanda, when the hurricane season, that's when they come out for all the islands and that type of sailing. So, yeah. And so for the novice sailor is, have an understanding of that. When you bring the sails in, have an understanding of the boat show times, when the discounts are out and things like that. So good times to buy. We promote it, we try to show it, we talk about it, and new sailors, you got to make them when they buy that boat. Since you two are with Current Yachts and all that, and are part of this whole thing, that to educate the sailor as well. It says, hey, you got the sails, you got the boat, they're all happy, and say, now don't forget you need to do this, and that, and have an understanding of what this boat means to you and what the outcome's going to be, so you can make sure your sailing's efficient. It's worry-free and things like that.
Which is the perfect segue to my next question about sail care and maintenance. Yesterday, I was at a boat and I was showing it to the client, and I noticed that there was a big green mold swath in the lazy jacks where it was just completely filled with rain and had been sitting there for who knows how long. And then, of course, on sea trial, you're going to see if that sail goes up and there's going to be a big green mold stain on the bottom of the sail in that area. What is the best way? What is some tips that you can give some new boat buyers on sail care and maintenance?
So we always ask, as I mentioned earlier, is to bring the sails in the fall so we can take a look at them. We have a cleaning facility that we send the sails out for cleaning. We'll assess them, take a look at them if we think they need to be. If you're in salt water, brackish water, you kind of want them cleaned because salt will cause corrosion into the rings, into the sail, will mildew the fabrics, especially in the islands, like you mentioned, you'll get the mold. We always tell people if they're not going to use their boat and you have our Ullman U stacks or stack packs or whatever, is that raise your booms, put them on tuck them on a different angle. You got it. So that way the water drains out. I mean, because, when a sail's flaked back and forth, water's still going to catch. So this is a way then, at least on an angle, you can get most of the water on out. So it doesn't sit in there. So if you're going to leave the boat for 4 or 5 months, either take the sails off, angle things, have somebody check on it because it's just a breeding ground for mold. But you can also, if you're not by a place where you can do it, You can take like a sail soap and you can take a soft brush and you can try to get some of it off yourself. But if it's been in there really bad, then we use chemical treatment. The chemical treatment's the best. It doesn't hurt the sail. You don't want to use heat treatments or hot water because you can burn the resins out of the sail and cause more problems than you need. So just pay
Yeah.
attention to that. But some people will do it. I get people in all the time, I want my sails cleaned. I say, well, it's not going to turn them bright white. They'll smell good, but we'll get the bugs out. We'll get the spiders out. We'll get the brackish water out. We'll get the salt water off of them. It'll turn them, a nice, clean looking. It won't get deep, dark stains on out, but they're good. I tell people for that, maybe every couple of years to get your sails cleaned. I have some customers that want it cleaned every single year. I tell people if they're out like on the racing side of it, we get done with a regatta, we're hosing the sails down all the time. Cruisers aren't going to do that.
No.
Um, but to protect your investment in the boat, you should. If you're on a big cruise and you're going to the islands and you're at a dock, take a hose on out if they let you. Some places won't let you do that, but some places will. Take a hose because you got to wash off all your standing rigging in the hose and keep the salt water off the boat. So you treat the sails the same way. Don't be afraid to hose the bottom of the jib down if salt water is getting all over it from the waves. Do the furling drums and all that stuff.
And I would say, as a boat owner too, we learned very quickly that preventative maintenance is always going to be better than having to address issues when they occur, whether it is damage to the rig or to your sail inventory, your cushions, your teak, your gel coat, all of these things, right? I would say talk to your sailmaker once they've put on the sails. Make sure you understand how to furl your jib properly. Make sure to get their tips on how to protect even your running rigging. If you have to scour your halyards or whatever it is that you should be doing, or ask questions, because you'll learn a few things and you'll know to make sure, again, to protect your investment. You're going to want to pay attention to these things and follow their guidance.
Yeah, people will miss like just stitching. On the seams and things, they might have snagged something going across the mast in the tack, and you don't see that. And when it comes in the spring, we look, we do like a 9-point repair thing, looking at the sails. We look at all the webbings, we look at all the seams and stitching, the clue rings, make sure the webbing's not worn out, the cleats, everything. And we might find there's something snagged, some stitching in the whole. If a seam has 3 rows on it, maybe 2 were snagged all the way off, so it's only holding on by one thing. And eventually, as Marilyn said, preventative medicine is great. It's better to spend $150 than spending, $500 to $1,000 later because the whole sale blew apart. And
Right.
I know I get some customers when I send out my newsletter in the fall, and it's kind of the same thing. They're like, Greg, this newsletter's the same. And I go, well, that's great. That means you're finally learning, because it's the same thing I'm going to keep telling you every year to get these sales in and get the preventative maintenance done. So when you guys hit the water in 26, you're good to go. You're not waiting on us. You're putting your sails up, you're going sailing, you're going to enjoy the summer. Maintenance free, hopefully.
I had one other question that I wanted to follow up on. You talked about where the sails are made. So for new sales, then, how do they get to their customer? Do they come back to Cleveland for a QC? Is the QC done at the loft and then sail ships directly to the customer? How do you work that out?
Nothing ever goes direct to the customer. It'll always come to us. That's the first way that you'll lose a customer, if it goes direct to them, because if something was wrong, something was missed, then you're getting a phone call, then it's got to come back to you, got to go back to the customer. Every one of the sales goes to one of my lofts or ones that I'm involved in. So it goes there, it gets a check over, make sure the numbers are on, the leach cords are there, all the slides are correct, everything is done right, it's being remeasured, it's going over everything with a fine-tooth comb again, just to make sure. Then it's bagged up and then it gets shipped to the customers, get delivered to the customer picks up, depending where they are. If they're close to the loft, comes to the loft, they pick it up.
Mhm.
I like it when a customer gets to come in and pick it up a little bit more, because then we can show him some things. And I forget which one of you said it. It's just furling the sail properly is a
Yeah.
huge deal, especially if you use a white furling cover. I don't know how many times I see this sail furled backwards. We have a logo that sits out on the outside. So I tell them, logo on the outside means it's furled right. Your old sail had it on this side. Comes in the fall, and I'm like, why is it furled the wrong way? Well, I wanted to run the line down the other way. It's white UV. I didn't see it. And I'm like, well, we talked about this. So that's why I like to come in sometimes. We show them how to put the batten pockets, how the battens go in, because I get people that we use a lot of flip flops or we go inside. and then people miss the batten end. They put it underneath or over the top. Usually can't do that, but somehow it happens. And then the guy's like, "Well, I lost my battens." Well, how'd you lose your battens? Well, they all came flying out. Like, why? So you got to educate them a little bit on how some things are done. You forget, guys and women are sailing for 20 years, and we just want to go sailing, and we forget about the simplest things. And so we got to keep making sure, hey, don't forget this is how we doing it, and kind of the 101 sailing thing we're talking about.
Everyone appreciates a good reminder. I know I do.
Yeah, it's a refresher course.
Yeah, yes.
I think a lot of our viewers will find tremendous value in all of this sharing. Greg, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us. It's essential and we all have to start somewhere. So I will make sure to put the contact information for Greg and the Ullman Sails in the description below. If you have any questions for Greg, post your comments and browse the Marine Directory as well to find more sailmakers, more partners to help you on your boat ownership journey. Thanks again, Greg, and we'll see you on the next one. Fair winds.
Fair winds.
Got it. Have a good one, all. Thank you.